Hello and welcome to the Cabin Boy Knits Woolcast. This is a special edition. It is our interview series.
We have an amazing lineup of very incredible and talented fiberists. And beginning with our very first interview, our very first guest.
Julie Crawford. She's a fantastic designer from Toronto.
And she's also a published poet.
And she's got a fantastic knitting blog. It is one of the top knitting blogs in Canada.
So sit back, grab your favorite project, whether it be knitting,
crochet, or embroidery, and listen to her story. Okay, we are here with Julie Crawford. So welcome, Julie.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
We've got an audience that pretty much are all over the world. So for those who don't know you, who is Julie Crawford?
Oh, well, I'm a knitter, an embroiderer, a writer, a blogger. I live in Toronto in Canada, and I have been designing knitting patterns for, I'm going to say about 12 years. Oh. And then I've recently started designing knitting themed embroidery patterns, and that's been happening over the last year as well, which is neat. And one of my most recent projects, I was embroidering on knitting, which feels like, a real culmination of a lot of things that I love.
That's fantastic. I've noticed over the last few years that people who are traditionally knitters have migrated into other things and started either crocheting, or embroidery seems to be really popular now, and quilting as well. So what drew you to embroidery?
Oh, I honestly couldn't even say that there was like this real beautiful moment. I learned to cross stitch as a kid. I had an extremely crafty grandmother, and she's the one who taught me how to knit and taught me how to cross stitch. My mom's not really one for any of those, although she does enjoy the embroidery now. Yeah. And then I would periodically embroider here and there, but nothing really sparked my interest. And then probably in 2019, I just on a whim was like, you know what, that's a cute embroidery kit that just happened to cross my feed. I will buy it just to try something different. And I did the stitches, and I was like, that's right. I actually really enjoy embroidery, and it felt really complimentary. When it's like when you knit for a long time, and I don't know about you, but I get like the gritty shoulder situation that tends to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you've been on the big marathon knitting bender, and then suddenly you're like, everything hurts. My wrists are hurting, or my shoulder hurts. And so I like having a creative craft that doesn't trigger any of those same sort of repetitive strain injuries that I have from knitting. And the other thing that I really like about it is that it is so fast. You can embroider a piece far faster than I personally can knit a sweater.
Wow. I love your embroidery, the one that says sweater weather. I love that one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, with the colorful yoke.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really nice. So how does that work? So do you design it, or do you buy it, or how does that, I don't know how embroidery works.
I design it. I literally pencil, paper, and I sketch it out. I do see that other people who are far more high tech than I am have like a digital pen and fancy iPad situations, and they're drawing straight onto the screen for like a completely vectorized image right out of the gate. I am not there. I am very low tech. And so with pencil and a sketchbook, and I sketch it out. Once I've got something I really like, I go over it with like a fine tipped pen, Pilot Fine Liner. It's like a little felt tip that I really like, just to give it a nice crisp image. Then I take a picture of that, and then it gets downloaded into some software to start the vectorizing process. I don't know how to use any of the Adobe software. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't know how to use Illustrator. I should really learn, but I haven't. I haven't at all. So either I have two people that I use for tech support, one person that I pay, she's amazing, and another, and she prefers to kind of keep it on the down low. I don't think she's looking for more customers. And the other would be my husband. So who I don't have to pay. So that's always good too. Um, Gotta love the free labor.
Well, I'm really interested in that response because your Instagram account is amazing. The photos are fantastic. So what's behind that? Who's behind that?
Well, if I'm in the photo, unless
Yeah.
it's an obvious selfie, which I very rarely take, because I have very short T-Rex arms, which never shows up in the photos. But they do. They're very short. It's very difficult for me to get my whole self into it. And so if it's of me, my husband takes the photo.
Okay.
And he's been doing that for a long time. We've been married for 12 years, and he was taking photos even before we got married. So we've got a long history of that, and we've got down to a pretty quick science. We can usually do what we call our FO photos inside of 5 minutes, unless like we've got a lot of uncooperative elements, like if the weather's really bad, or just like you can't get a good background, or you thought you had this cool idea and it just didn't pan out, those sorts of things. If I'm not in the photo, I took it.
Jamie's dying to ask a question.
No, I was gonna say it's the opposite with us because I take the photos, and because of some of my training, let's just say. I've coached in this one, but he's gotten a lot better. So it doesn't take as long. But I get flustered because I would know what I would do, but then I'm trying to coach him as to get all the photos. So, but it always works out.
No, then we end up wrestling on the ground, and then we compare ourselves in front of the camera.
Gosh, sometimes it's just like some of his photos. Sometimes it's on a whim. You see something like we woke up one morning that one where. It was snow in April, and we thought it was over. It's the last April. And I looked out the window and I thought, oh my gosh, there's like this much snow on the clothesline and everything. And I said, that was the photo. I said, Christopher, okay, I just had this image. You get under that clothesline, and it was with all the blue hanging from the clothesline, and it looked like it was a skirt. That something like that where it's just impulses quick, but for the most part, you have it down to a science, it sounds like.
Yeah, the pictures are fantastic. I want to talk about your grandmother for a second. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned your grandmother and knitting. How old were you when you started knitting?
Oh, that's a good question. And you reach back in your childhood. I think I might have been 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. And, I can still remember these bright green plastic knitting needles that she got for me, like kids knitting needles. Yeah. And, some bright, ugly craft yarn. It was the 80s. Acrylic was everywhere. So, that was definitely what we had, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked just being able to make the stitches. In the beginning, it's that holes and drop stitches everywhere, extra stitches, like the standard learning process that you just can't skip over no matter how old you are when you learn. Those things still happen. And then that was a really good introduction for me. And I didn't do anything really beyond like knit and purl until I was in my 20s. And then I was living abroad in Istanbul, and I saw Turkish knitting, which blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind. And I was like, wait, I know how to knit. I could do this. And so, found the yarn shops, bought some yarn, bought some more knitting needles. And like, then of course you have YouTube, and there's all sorts of resources online. And I just, with the skills I already had, just pushed it a little bit further to be able to, broaden all that out. Just Excellent. Didn't stop.
What took you to Istanbul?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I did a very standard thing that a lot of Canadians do, and I went backpacking after university or college, and after university for myself, and it was the early 2000s, and it was the first time I had ever traveled like that. I'd never really done that. I grew up in Sudbury in Northern Ontario, and like travel on this scale just didn't it seemed so unimaginable. And then doing it, you get that travel bug. You're like, oh, I need to do more of this. How can I do more of this? And teaching English as a second language or teaching English as a foreign language was, getting very popular. And I took a course to be a trained teacher and then started looking for jobs. Turned out there was a job in Istanbul and I applied for it and got it, and didn't quite have the money to fly to Istanbul. I flew, somewhere in Europe, and then took a train very slowly across the rest of Europe
Oh, wow.
to get there.
Yeah. That must have been amazing. Just amazing.
It was an amazing adventure, and I'm really glad I did it.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's great.
That brings me to, I'm just going to ask about, because that is what's going to bring me to, I know you're a writer and I know you've done poetry. So,
Hold on, a published writer.
Yes. And I know that you have your collection of poetry. It's from 2013, Tangled.
I have 2 books. So
2016.
Tangled 2013 and Lady Crawford was 2016.
Lady Crawford 2016. So my question would be, coming from your background, and is this something where, I noticed with your poetry, it seems like your mind sort of just, your trajectory of thought from one verse to the next is like this way and that way. And do you maybe relate that back to growing up in Sudbury, or was that, and you hadn't traveled, you mentioned like the whole world out there. So was that sense of escapism like early on where your thoughts were already sort of going places that eventually developed into poetry? Because poetry today, as you write, let's say in 2016, quite different than going back to the time. But do you think it sort of started there?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I do think that I didn't grow up. I love my family. I feel extremely grateful and fortunate. I come from really good people, and they are all readers, but none of them were writers, right? And so to be able to sort of explore a lot of that was something I just sort of came onto on my own. And I remember even as a kid, and I had like those little like really girly diaries, and I never kept a diary. I would make up poems and I'd write them in there. So because that was way more interesting than whatever I did that day. And so I think that I also went to an arts high school as well. And so I had a lot more exposure to, again, like theater and music and photography and a lot of other things that I am very grateful to have been exposed to in those formative years that I might not otherwise have had. And I was a voracious reader, and I like the way poetry plays with language. And it always drives me crazy when people say poetry isn't accessible, because I think, some things click for some people that don't click for other people, but there's poetry out there for everybody at some point of time or another. You'll find something that resonates. But I like the playfulness of language. I like the different forms. I think creativity is something that happens in many different ways. And I really like being able to do all of those different things. Currently, I do a regular, I guess I'm a contributing writer to Tattle Creek magazine. And the editor's really given me some awesome free rein there, where I can write an essay, whatever I want. And then it also accompanies sort of like a crafty thing. So the last couple have had a knitting pattern in there. And so I focus on something that would be very beginner friendly, because it's not a craft magazine. It's sort of a hybrid interest magazine. And it's been really interesting to be able to explore how those areas of creativity and thought process connect in terms of writing or in terms of any kind of craft potential. So I feel like I'm saying I'm lucky a lot. So definitely I want to underline that. I am really lucky.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to ask about specifically, I jotted down a couple of verses from Groupies, and the other one was,
oh my gosh, you have my book.
No, this is what I did. I'm going to get them.
So
but what I did is I some of your reviews I sort of went over, and one of your reviews described your poetry as wicked smart with tempered with a sense of humor.
Yes.
And so it's interesting because I just want to read a couple of these lines, because one of the poems I thought, oh, that's dark. And I thought, that one threw me off. And then this, I thought, am I supposed to laugh here? Because it's really funny because it conjures up these images. So from Fight or Flight, it was young girls taught the loft of a sword so long it pulled horsemen from the air and thrashed them to roses. And then in the same poem, A Fight or Flight is soon all the men were dead and the girls, sexual as overkill, drive off in a Lamborghini. And I'm thinking, is that like Charlie's Angels full throttle? So you just get these images. It just goes from here to here, but then Fight or Flight. And I'm thinking, okay, I was trying to figure out the thought process. That's why I was asking earlier about where this is coming from. So it seems so random, but then at some point it needs to come full circle. But then it doesn't necessarily, because it could just dead end stop in some of them, correct? So I'm thinking, do you really have to read each word? And like you say, it's when you choose a word, in every word that you choose, you've got to kind of dissect it and really take it in, because it will sort of become a whole, or does it?
Mm.
There's a question
Yes,
in there
There is
somewhere.
a question in there. It's the thought process to the beginning to end, but there's not necessarily an end. It's just thought.
So form it as are you going to ask a question?
That's kind of the question.
Okay.
This is actually, I love that you've read this. I love that you found it. Fight or Flight is, I can tell you some of the origin of that one. It's actually a poem for my daughter, and she was very young when I wrote it. And I didn't want to, I've been to a lot of poetry readings and I've read a lot of poetry. And, you know, sometimes when people really love another person, they end up just pouring out something that's just way too saccharine, you know, in that love. And Fight or Flight is very feminist to a certain degree, because what I'm trying to balance out is this guidance related to sexuality and protection and the forms of violence that might that women can encounter within that. And so the Honorable Geisha that are referenced in that poem, they were these female samurai, and so that was something that, and they were trained specifically to protect themselves and their children while the men were away at war and what have you. And it was really just about self-protection. And I really wanted to explore the ideas of women owning their sexuality and being able to control the narrative of their own bodies and their own desires, regardless of the kinds of violence that others may wish to visit upon them.
That's great. That's excellent. I want to stay on the writing theme and migrate over to your blog, which is considered one of Canada's top knitting blogs. So congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to do that, to write that? And then you've got so many great things in there. You've tackled cooking in it, and you've got your writing, and you've also talked about knitting. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my blog pre-Ravelry. Do you remember the world before any of that sort of thing? There was a central hub. And I remember coming across other knitting blogs, and they were these windows into all these techniques. In particular, I remember Yuni Zhang had a really great one. I don't know if she still is the editor of Interweave Knits, but she was for quite some time. And that was really inspiring for a variety of technique sharing. And there was a real heyday of blogs back in the day. And I feel really fortunate to have been a part of it while you would still have so much interaction. Like, I met really good friends that I have offline through blogging and through the commenting on each other's blogs and the sharing of each other's lives. My blog now, I would say, is definitely evolved. Instagram has changed the landscape of blogging so much into more of a microblog format that I think sort of scratches that itch for both blog writers and for people who enjoy blogs, because it's the same kind of content, but just in a tinier form.
Yeah.
And you still have, that's where the comments are, and that's where people are, because it gives you more of an aggregate rather than having to go through like a blog reader and clicking on all these different things. And so I do understand that. But I try and consistently post on my Friday ones, which is sort of a roundup of variety of things that I really like from around the web that I found that week. There was a long running series of Modification Mondays where I posted every Monday. I would feature a knitter who had modified an existing knitting pattern to make something completely different. And that was really inspiring for me, and I hope for others as well. But what's interesting is that because people started to do more on Instagram, there was less of an area where I could find those easily. And so, again, because people moved away from blogging in any kind of formal sense, it was harder to actually continue the Modification Monday series. And I love Instagram. It's not a critique of anything at all. I think we're watching that evolution of our lives online happening in real time. And I find that really interesting. But I do think that there's a place for blogging. And I know that some of the other knitters and designers that I know have also talked about like how there's something about going deep on an idea in a blog post and being able to control the layout of that in a certain way that as great as Instagram is, still not a blog post.
Yep.
And I feel that way too. I really do.
Yep. Excellent. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about your designs because we haven't spent any time on that yet. So the designs that you have on Ravelry.
Yes.
What was your first design?
Oh my gosh. It was the Stockholm scarf, and it was a free pattern. It was the first time I had ever designed a knitting pattern. And it was, at the time, it was when those big, long, double cowls they felt like they just arrived, basically, in the world. And I wrote it up because I had been in Stockholm, in Sweden, and it was freezing. It was August, and the high was 12 degrees, and I did not bring enough warm clothes with me. So I went shopping. Like I needed an excuse. I went shopping, and I found like these big cowls, and I was like, yeah, this is cozy. This is great. This is exactly what I need. Bought some sweaters, bought some things, and layered up. And then there was a photo of me with this cowl that I got in Stockholm on my blog when I was sharing photos of the trip. People were so excited about this gigantic, circular scarf. They were like, whoa, like, did you knit this? Like, where did you get this? And honestly, it was just some random store in Stockholm. It wasn't even, anything special. It was definitely just like acrylic and things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with acrylic, but like store-bought stuff has a particular quality to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I looked at the stitch and I was like, I could knit this. This is knittable. And people seemed interested in it. And I was like, all right, fine. I can do something for this. And I learned so much from designing that first pattern. It's basically like two long normal scarves sewn together. And then people would want to not do that. They didn't want to seam it. They wanted to have like just like one big loop. But what I found is that in that process, it stretched out. Like it just got too stretchy because there was an eyelet in it. And I mean, I learned a lot from how people want to knit. Like what do knitters want? That was really interesting to me. And also too, in terms of just learning to write for clarity and construction. And I think for when people are doing their first pattern, a free pattern is a good way to cut your teeth and then get that feedback. You have to be open to that
Definitely.
feedback.
Do you have any designs to show us?
Oh, this is the Oxford Circus. I knitted this. It's a top-down boat neck. I really like boat necks. I find them very flattering and forgiving for a variety of different body styles. And it's a long sleeve. It's knit all in a silk mohair blend, but I've also seen with the test knitters, they knit it in merino and other fingering weights, and it just seems really versatile. This one, it also seems to work well with a variety of ease. This one I played around with a lot of extra ease, and then I'm experimenting with sort of like the lighter fabrics and being able to tuck it in. Now I have another one that's a smaller gauge and a little bit more form-fitting as well.
So what else do you have to show us?
Okay, well, I tend to like a lot of handwear as somebody who gets a lot of cold hands.
Yes.
And so these are the Avalon fingerless mitts. I love fingerless
love
mitts.
those. I saw those on Ravelry. I love those. They're beautiful.
Oh, Thank
Very
you. I
nice.
like this sort of, I'll just bring it a little closer, like a basket weave kind of stitch.
Yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
they are so comfortable and I've worn them so much. And
Really.
what's amazing is they don't actually take a lot of yarn. They're really great for when you have like less than half a skein, or, you know, probably
Sure.
about under 200 yards definitely makes them. So these are definitely one of my favorites. Spring and fall to me are peak fingerless knitting season, and I'm always excited to bust those out for more handwear. These are my Pemba mittens. So it
Oh,
has sort of
nice.
this like lozenge cable type situation. This is actually done in a DK with a twisted ribbing here.
Yep.
And the
Very nice.
pattern actually also comes with a headband that has the same cable design as well. That's sort of like an ear warmer headband,
Yep.
not so much decorative as like ear warming. And
Very nice. They look comfortable. They look warm.
then something that this is one of my free patterns, just picking twigs off of it. These are my hot chocolate mittens. So these
Wow.
are done in just a super bulky yarn with like a really super quick fake cable that just kind of goes up the center of them. They are
Yep.
really fast. I find it's like one Netflix movie for one mitten, one Netflix movie for the other
Perfect.
mitten.
That's perfect. That's fantastic. And I heard you've been working with Kivia lately.
I have. So as you know, is this a good time to talk about Knit City? Shall we
It
talk
is.
about Knit City
Yes.
Virtual?
Yes. It's
Okay.
a perfect time.
Uh, well, I was so excited when you were talking about that beautiful pivot and merino and silk yarn, and it's just absolutely amazing. When you sent me this skein in this stunning dusty rose color, and honestly, I am such a huge fan of this color. To me, it's like a really elegant grown-up pink. I don't know. It's, you know, you could say pink, but I'm like, pink just doesn't sound as like
Yeah. I like grown up
badass
pink.
color.
Yes.
I love it. And the other thing I wanted to do was something that I felt we weren't seeing a lot of these days, which is we're not seeing a lot of any of the lace. And I can remember years ago, lace knitting was where it was at. Everyone was doing lace knitting, super complicated. Everyone had these crazy lace shawls, like they were extras in Outlander, and you know, they were amazing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do something that felt modern and more graphic. So this is a very like a arrowhead lace. Now, I'm a smaller of the human species, so like I can pull this over my shoulders pretty easily, but I really like just those slouchy kind of cowl style. Throw it on with a jacket. You've just got that little bit of extra warmth.
Yeah.
And I mean, for indoor or outdoor. And I like it because it also functions almost as like jewelry, you know? You're like, could have a necklace on. You could just have like a really awesome cowl on. And that
I,
does the same thing.
I never thought of it that way. That's a great way to think about it. It's beautiful. It's
Oh,
absolutely beautiful. You did a great job.
I love it. And it's so soft. And, you know, it's one of those things where there's such subtle, let's see if we can get right up into there. There's such
Yeah.
subtle color variations in the dyeing that you've done.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful in terms of just slight tonal variations. And I'm really happy with how the stitch came out. There's
The
a little
stitch is
special
gorgeous.
technique just at the bottom here. One of my pet peeves about cowls has to do with the fact that the ribbing often flips. So there's
Yeah.
actually just 2 rows of a linen stitch to prevent
Okay.
the ribbing
The
from
ribbing.
flipping up.
Yeah.
So it's annoying when it does
Good
that.
idea. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
So I'm really, I absolutely love it. And I'm totally not going to ever give this back to you. It's so soft. It's so soft.
Yeah, I can remember. I can remember. We haven't really talked about this yet, but I remember when we first met you at Twist, and it was an interesting week because I think we were tired. We'd been teaching all week and whatnot, and there was this little burst of sunshine in the kitchen, and it was you, and you were just so wonderful and happy and whatnot, and so it was really nice, and I just felt like we clicked right away, and so I definitely wanted to find out all about you when you're in Toronto and to reach out and collaborate with you, and I'm so happy we did because that's absolutely gorgeous. It's really nice.
And the Sudbury connection was that was sort of like, oh, she can't be from Sudbury. I don't know anybody from Sudbury. And it's like, you don't randomly meet people from Sudbury, especially at Twist where, well, you know where Twist is. If anybody
Yeah.
does, it's in the middle of, so far north in the middle of nowhere, it seems. It's like, you mean Sudbury. So that was quite special too. Yeah.
Oh, I loved meeting you both at Twist. I enjoyed Twist quite a bit, and was that cute B&B that we were all in together,
Yeah.
all the teachers were in together, and that was adorable. And I'm so glad that we've been able to continue this on. I do want to show you one more thing though.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, keep your jewelry
So,
on.
yeah, I mean, why would I take it off? But then you sent me the blue.
Yes.
The blue. And it's this beautiful, I don't know what you've named this colorway, and I know sometimes you don't. Yes, there it is. But it's this wonderful, dusky, cozy blue that makes me think of, like, you know, when the evening light just takes on that blue.
Yes. Yeah.
This is it. This is that color. And I absolutely love it.
That was almost there was a poem coming on there.
I'm sure there's a poem somewhere brewing.
I'll keep going. And we will write a poem. It'll go with each skein. There we go. And so I've been knitting the blue one of this. And then, I mean, maybe I'll send you the blue one. I mean, I'll try. It's hard to give it up. It's just so, like, so squishy.
Yeah.
So soft.
Yeah, it's really nice. And we're going to have those for sale as a kit this week. It'll be a big kickoff April 10th. So we're really excited.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So what's in store for you? What's up next? What can we expect from Julie Crawford?
Oh, well, you know, it's kind of a tough year to plan. I do have young kids, and so, you know, we roll into various in and out of lockdowns, and then they're in school, then they're not in school, and all those fun things. But generally speaking, my next big focus is actually just like launching the cowl and celebrating the cowl and being able to talk about this pattern. And because we actually had this on deck for last spring.
Yes.
And then to suddenly be rebooting it in a very different context. We were talking about having like hard copy patterns at the festival and doing these things. And like, that's not possible right now. So, you know, being able to pivot with that's basically my next focus. I have some spring, summer embroidery kits that I'm going to be launching. And soon I'll be starting to wholesale those as well, which is been a whole ramping up of a learning curve for me because I haven't done any kind of wholesale before. But you can get very exclusive. Nobody else has this except for you. I think you can kind of see it, like the...
Yes, I saw those. I was looking at those. Those are gorgeous.
It was sort of like a riff on the Yarn for Days one, which has been my most popular and like a really good beginner embroidery kit. And it's very colorful and happy. And then, so these ones just sort of mix up some of them, but all tonal varieties in a color with flowers. So really for the pink one, which I feel like pink, this is really working here. Yeah. They actually are real pink flowers. So like I actually made sure I did a Google. I'm thinking like, can you actually find something pretty close to this in nature? So there's a whole little variety in here and they're a little bit different depending on the colors. So like the purple ones have pansies, which you wouldn't find in the pink or in the blue at all. So just different things like that, which I think has been really fun. So I just finished getting feedback from my test stitchers. Nice. And I just got to there's a couple of little details for inside of the kits. I'm changing up some of what's in the kit. I'm going to start adding needle threaders and like a color card for sorting the threads a little more easily. Yeah. And then I've got more writing to do. I'm working on a new collection, and then I've got deadlines for Tattle Creek, of course. I've got essays to write and other exciting things. I was recently invited to like send some poems in for, you know, in terms of like responses for life post-pandemic. You know, how do we envision the world after COVID? And so there's a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, but you know, I'm also just trying to really be gentle with myself in terms of timelines because it's hard to predict you know, I'm very optimistic, like vaccines are coming and kids are kind of in school sometimes, maybe, fingers crossed. I hope they stay there. And then, you know, like all of these things, everyone's doing what's right for them, right? This isn't about, I have no judgment of anyone else's choices. What you decide is what you decide. But I think it's, I'm still really grateful to be able to have so much creativity in my life that I find really gives me a lot of joy during this time. It really does. And just being able to make things like, what are the non-knitters and non-embroiderers doing with themselves during this time? What are they doing?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Yeah. So I have one final question, and it is, who is one of your fiber heroes? And it could be someone that inspires you in the fiber world, and it can't be the other guy.
Okay. Can't be Jamie?
Oh, sorry. Aside from Jamie.
Okay. What about you? Can it be you?
And aside from myself, yes.
Can I do two?
Yes, absolutely. And why? Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna go with Tanis Lavely from Tanis Fiber Arts and Shireen Nadir from the Blue Brick. And I would say what inspires me particularly about these two friends of mine, and I immediately feel guilty for the other amazing fiber friends I have out there, these stunning dyers. You know what it's like. There are so many brilliant people out there.
Okay, yeah, so you can blame it on me and say you could only name two. So.
Okay. But one of the things I particularly like within that is that their creativity is never just one thing, right? So it's never just dyeing the yarn specifically. It's dyeing the yarn. It's photography. It's pattern designing. It's, you know, putting together like these kinds of collectible items that are either, you know, I think about Tanis's photography. She puts out like these calendars and they're absolutely stunning. And then I think about Shireen, and she's gone into pottery and she's got all this amazing stuff. Somehow she gets gradients onto pottery. I don't even know how you do that. And, you know, what I find inspiring about them is that they're not just sitting back, dyeing the same yarn over and over again. There's this constant experimentation and pushing their own creative limits, not saying what's popular, what do people want. Yeah. It's what do I want? What's kind of like lighting me up right now? And then they go and explore that. And I think that that's where where creativity is totally driving the bus. To me, it's just like, those are people who are feeling creatively fulfilled. And isn't that what we all want?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes. And Tanis is in Montreal, and is that correct?
Yeah.
And Blue Brick is in Oakville now, or
Brampton.
Bradford.
Bradford.
One with a B.
Yeah.
Up there.
Over there. That's great. Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of fun. So thank you so much for spending time with us and allowing us to ask you questions.
Oh my gosh. Thank you both. This has been absolutely wonderful. Anytime.
And we look forward to seeing you in person again.
Yes.
Somewhere when things change.
Yes.
That'd be amazing.
See our people, right?
We'll definitely have to go for breakfast again.
Oh, I'd love that. Wouldn't that be so nice?
Just don't embarrass me. And don't embarrass me and eat bacon with your fingers. That's something we talked about earlier.
With a knife and fork?
Do you remember that story? We were sitting there and they served bacon on a plate, and I couldn't cut it with my knife. So I asked you if you'd mind if I picked it up and eat it with my fingers.
I do remember that.
You brought that story up when we were chatting just before you came on. That's why I mentioned it.
Anyway, it's been wonderful. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Okay, take care and stay safe.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I thought that was fantastic listening to Julie's story.
I mean, she's one incredible and very talented young lady.
And just to think of it, you two came from the same town in Northern Ontario.
It's our secret. But what an incredible journey she's had.
Yeah, it's been incredible.
I mean, she has come a long way.
Yeah, and to think that her grandmother planted the knitting seed.
As did yours.
As did mine, yes. And it's fantastic to hear her journey, her knitting journey. And she's been knitting and having the inspiration when she went to Turkey as well.
Yes, she's mentioned her travels. She's mentioned how she picked up some of her knitting skills there as
Yeah.
well, or improved on them. Oh my gosh, she's had so much in a very short period of time, I would say.
Yeah.
And she's developed into this designer.
And well, the interesting thing also is that she's got, she has built her brand in Toronto, and she has fantastic photographs to go with it as well. So she's got really the whole package. She has the writing down, she has the designing, and she has the photos.
And it's
fantastic.
And she is so easygoing.
Yes.
She's got an incredible mind. You could really pick out those ideas from her, and you could see how the process, her creative process, comes about.
She's also incredibly humble. Like
She is. Oh yes.
She's so down to earth.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine having to sit across from me in the restaurant watching me eat bacon with my fingers?
An embarrassment for sure.
I thought she was going to get up and run out of the restaurant, but no, she didn't.
I know. We talked a little bit about Sudbury. We talked about we touched a bit about on her poetry, but mostly, I mean, her knitting and her patterns and her designing and her color work. And what was new?
What was new was the cowl, and I think she was the perfect person to partner with on this cowl.
And she picked up that embroidery. Is something new?
Oh yes. The embroidery is really nice too. I thought that was check out the sweater one, the one sweater weather. It's beautiful. It's really nice. And I could tell the reason I asked her the question about how do you do this and how do you do the process is because it looked like someone drew it. Like it's very whimsical. It's really nice.
And I love that. It's like anybody who's creative. She just on a whim picks up something else, and she just continues to grow and develop with her creativity, and onward and upward and forward she goes, marches on. Absolutely a delight to sit with her and have that chat.
Yeah, I could have talked for hours.
We did.
Pardon me, I could have talked with Julie for hours. You could have talked for hours.
But we actually let Julie get in a few words. It was good.
So it was wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed it.
And we look forward to seeing you again, because we still have a very good, as we mentioned, an ongoing lineup in the upcoming next several months.
We have speakers from all over Canada and all different backgrounds as well. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And we look forward to seeing you again and surprise you with our next guests.
Yeah. So take care, everyone. Bye-bye.